This is Greg Smallwood, and you're listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast.
Hello, Looney listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast. This is another retrospective bonus episode for you, for newer Loonies that may not have caught some of the great interviews we've been able to do over the past years. Welcome. I am your High Priest of Khonshu, Ray, and following up from our first retrospective bonus episode, this is our second interview, and it was conducted again during our 100th episode way back when, and this was a great one. I had a lot of fun doing this. Just a bit of a putting things into context, I was in the middle of a move actually, so I recorded this in a near empty apartment with my partner Eve in the new apartment, but I jumped on to our old apartment to record this with none other than Greg Smallwood. So a very fun chat with Greg. Had some technical issues, as always. There's some gremlins everywhere, but it was a great chat. So I hope you enjoy this. The interview with Greg Smallwood. Enjoy. Yes, welcome Looney listeners. This is our 100th episode of Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. This is a celebratory interview, actually, to celebrate our 100th issue, and we wanted to do something really nice for the Loonies. So I am very pleased to announce that we have Moon Knight alumni Greg Smallwood with us. How are you, Greg?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Yeah, good. I am very excited to chat with you about Moon Knight. As I mentioned just before we hit the record button, many of the Loonies are just massive fans of yours. So I'm hoping to do this interview justice, but at the same time, it's good to just have a chat with you and see how things go.
Absolutely.
So look, first off the cuff, and we generally ask some of our guests anyway. Current pull list. So what's on your plate at the moment? Like, what are you reading? Not necessarily Marvel, but any of the publishers.
I don't actually have a pull list anymore, so it's just whatever grabs me. I usually will pick up a random single issue here and there, and then if I enjoyed it, I might wait and wait for the trade. Yeah, usually I'm reading old comics, but
yeah, they're good as well.
Kaiju Max, which is published by Oni, by Xander Cannon. I love that guy's work, so that's kind of I figured I'd like it, and a buddy of mine recommended it, and yeah, I loved. He did Heck, which is was part of his Double Barrel online webcomic thing, and winning an Eisner. But that's the book I usually recommend to people if they want to read Xander Cannon. But Kaiju Max is equally awesome.
Okay, and look, just forgive my total ignorance. I live a very blinkered comic book fandom. Kaiju, is it like Pacific Rim? Are we talking like monsters?
How would I pitch it? It's like it's if you took Godzilla, kaiju monsters, and you combine it with like The Wire or Oz, shows, and it's and it's drawn in a really cartoony, very stylized way, but at the same time it's got some real pathos to it. It's not very kiddie, and it can be very humorous, but also very serious. It's one of those books that you can't really describe how the tone is going to be. You just kind of have to read it for yourself, and then because my buddy pitched it to me, and I was like, I don't know. I'm not really like a big Japanese monsters guy. I know that it's Sander
Hmm.
Cannon. I thought, well, I mean, I'll probably like it, but it's just, and it didn't seem like it was really my thing. But then I ended up reading it, and I loved it. So yeah,
Oh
I
wow!
definitely
So
recommend.
so it's very much a recent thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They just released, Oni just released a kind of a compendium, I guess you would
Uh-huh.
call it. Got the first like two trade paperbacks in it.
Oh, okay.
They're going by seasons, if I remember correctly. So like the first trade is called season one, the second's like season two, and so on.
Okay.
So, but great book. Yeah, I think it kind of Xander is just one of these guys who's just kind of operating along the fringes of the mainstream, just producing really solid work. So I'm
Is
always
it is he a
eager.
writer and an artist or?
Yeah, he is a writer and an artist. He actually
Yeah.
got I first time I noticed him. I don't know what his I can't remember what his first work was, but I noticed him on Smacks that he did with Alan Moore when Alan Moore was doing his America's Best Comics,
Oh,
and
okay.
they did a book together, and and then I just kind of I would see him pop up from here here and there, and then eventually, um, uh, he got together with Kevin Cannon, who's no relation. They just happen to have the same last name, strangely enough.
Yeah. So Xander Cannon has done this Kaiju Max thing, and you mentioned about Heck and him working with Alan Moore,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
Um, Superhero wise, though, I mean, what has he done any like superhero kind of things as well, or is that what Alan Moore has? I'm very unfamiliar with
Um,
a lot of Alan Moore's stuff.
this is gonna sound weird because I've obviously only really worked in superhero comics with a few exceptions, but I didn't I didn't really grow up reading a ton of superhero comics. I read it.
Oh, okay.
It was my favorite comics growing up were Bone and The Rocketeer and
Okay.
Xenozoic Tales and stuff like that. I was always I did read Batman. I read like Nightfall when that came out. I was like, super pumped.
Hmm.
And I read Hulk by Peter David when he did his long run on.
Love that.
Uh,
Yeah.
that was definitely probably that was definitely my first real superhero run that I read was Hulk by Peter David. That's what I got into,
Okay.
and then after that I got into Flash, which Mark
Oh,
Waid did with I think Waringo.
yeah. Was that because of the TV show? There was a one season TV show with
Into it. It was actually really disappointing for me as a someone watching the TV show. And I grew up with the Superpowers action figures. I always loved the figures and I loved the cartoons. Anytime they did a cartoon, I was always devouring it. But my real entry point for Flash, was that TV show they did, which I still love. I think it's great. But
it is pretty cool. It's a little campy. Mark Hamill's a bit weird as the trickster, but
I love it. Looking back,
Yeah.
how camp it was, but at the time I took
Yeah.
it very seriously. But yeah, we went to a comic book convention. Probably the year it came out, and then I found out. My dad and I were looking for Flash comics for me to read, and then that's when I found out Barry Allen had died in the comics, and I was like, what?
No.
So the first Flash were Wally West comics, and at first I was like,
Yeah.
oh, read about Barry Allen, and
Yeah. Was it your first? Sorry, Greg.
No.
Was it your first exposure to a comic book death?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Probably thinking, oh, this is a be all and end all, but a couple of months down the track, he's back, or as it always goes. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No. It was just, it was eye opening. It was, like you said, it was my first exposure to a major comic book death. And of course, I didn't actually explain why it was going on. I found out years later.
Yeah.
But now every time I see a new fan walk into the store and they kind of, I've been in a comic book shop where, someone's experienced that, where they come in, and they're like, hey, I want to, I don't know, something about, Captain America. And they're like, oh, well, Steve Rogers, not quite Captain America right now, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think back,
it's always
that time, found out that Barry Allen was dead. So,
yeah. That was your moment where that was your kind of turning point, I guess. Because it's always the way, isn't it? Like, there's always, as you can say, as some people say it, like always a disappointment in the fact that there's no norm. If it's not one character, it's another character that you like that isn't quite how you originally perceived it. And but that's the nature of comics, and I guess the story writing in general. You got to keep it fresh, you got to keep it interesting. So stuff like Dan Slott with Superior Spider-Man, and you hear these death threats and all this, and sooner or later he's back. So it's it all finds its way, it all sorts itself out in the wash. So Greg, did you grow up in a comic book kind of household? You mentioned your dad and yourself went to conventions. Was your dad a collector?
Yeah, actually he was, and he collected probably for the same reason that I still collect now. It's mainly for the art. I definitely read a lot of comics, but the big draw for me is the art. And so a lot of people might follow writers. I tend to follow artists, and if the writing captures my attention, then I will go ahead and read it. But sometimes I don't even bother reading the comics. I just look at.
Oh wow!
but he's the one. Yeah, my dad's the one that got me into it, and
nice.
Then buying the superpowers, the DC superpowers action figures when I was a kid. That was that was kind of my entry point for the characters. And they had the Marvel had the what was it, Secret Wars line of figures.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That was.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but that dates me. So now
I don't. No worries. So you do you collect figures still, or
no? Actually,
okay.
I mean, I guess I technically do, because I do buy figures, and I've even got some Hot Toys that I buy for reference. So I'll figures or just use them to kind of get a sense of how that character looks in 3 dimensions. So yeah.
Well, let's talk about your art then, because I'm sure all the loonies are probably, screaming at me, ask him something about his art. You mentioned back before that you read Peter David's run. I remember being absolutely in awe at Dale McKean's art. I loved his art. He later went on to do Pit for Image, and then I kind of lost track with. I know he's doing a Peter David team up in June sometime. But speaking for yourself, like, who were your influences? Like, who did you like to look at? Whose art did you like to look at?
My all-time favorite superhero artist would definitely be Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, and he is most known for the art he did for the DC licensing. And so, like, if you had any, well, I think his art was actually all over those DC Superpowers action figures. Actually, I think his art is the one cards, and like I said, bed sheets and PJs and T-shirt. You could imagine if it had DC art, it was his art. And
so I'm imagining then just very kind of classic style comic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's I think why he was never like a huge name, even though he was. I think he's considered one of the artists. If you talk to other comic book artists, Garcia Lopez, and that's because he is understated, but man, he knows how to draw the human figure like nobody else, and his pages and his storytelling is always really dynamic. I mean, he's just
awesome.
He's just really on it, and I think he just turned 70 last year, and so he's been making for a long time. And I think he started when he was a teenager. He's Argentinian, and so he did a lot of comics there, and then eventually made the move over to American comics while he was still relatively young. So
Wow.
He's been producing a lot. But yeah, for
Did he do Marvel at all? Sorry, Greg, or was he just pretty much a DC man?
just a DC guy. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, all of his work has been for DC. Some of my favorite DC stuff that he's done would be Cal, that was written by Dave Gibbons. It's a Superman Elseworld story. And then did what else did he do? He did a ton of stuff for DC. Twilight, which was actually under I don't think it was Vertigo, it was like pre-Vertigo, but it was Howard Chaykin writing. It was like a sci-fi series. And he did Batman Reign of Terror, another Elseworld story.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Gosh.
I've probably seen a lot of his art, but I just didn't know it was him. He sounds like he's...
He had a story in the Action Comics 1000. He did the Mr. Mixius story. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I got that issue.
Oh.
So yeah,
that's his work. His work always
awesome.
Really, really sharp. If he inks himself, or if Kevin Nolan.
Yes.
And so, yeah.
Okay. I love reading older comics as well. I'm doing a bit of a read for a review coming up, and I was reading stuff by Steve Englehart and Al Milgrom, and I really. Yeah, Al Milgram's work is great. I love it.
Oh yeah. Oh, he's fantastic stuff too. Yeah, it's always I love going back, and sometimes I'll rediscover work, or I'll discover somebody that I completely missed. And there are a lot of those because there's decades of comics before I ever got into them, and there's plenty of work out there, and not all of them are celebrated. It's not quite like movies where a film becomes a cult classic after disappearing for a while. A lot of comics, they just fade into obscurity.
They do. Just the vast number of them. I guess it's hard to.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody collected newspapers, to like try to find, some, obscure article. I mean, that's really tough. But fortunately now we have Comixology, and so you can go digging around on Comixology, and they're putting a lot more on there, and I think that's great because you can actually, have access to what you didn't before.
Yeah. So are you a digital man, or are you a bit of both, or how do you read your comics?
Yeah, I prefer reading them in print. It's just easier on the eyes. And especially when it comes to older comics, I love the feel of the paper, and and I love the I love the bad coloring, and it's, to me, there's a lot of charm to that, and so especially for older comics, but newer comics, I don't know, it depends. I mean, I'm a Marvel guy, worked for the company for a number of years, but first to admit that their quality of paper that they use, their paper stock is just terrible. So for a lot of Marvel, I don't care if it's digital. I'll read it digitally because I don't feel like I'm gaining anything. On
You've done a couple of covers for Valiant Comics. We're big Valiant Comics fans as well. They use good paper, I believe. I mean, it's quite nice.
Oh yeah, it's really nice. I love seeing my stuff in print because it's production quality is just top notch. Boom is usually really good too. Boom Studio has these nice cardstock covers, and
I think it pays. I mean, as you say, it really advantages the art. It brings the most out of it. So I don't know. Hopefully Marvel can, do something, or at least release prestige formats. I think DC don't they do that, and on the paper stock, slightly different as well. Also, sorry, Greg, just going back a couple, you mentioned you did just drop a little thing there about you were, thinking that at this stage you'd be doing a lot of creator-owned stuff. Do you dabble with creating characters and stories and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a big folder of ideas, and my sister and I worked on Vampironica together. We wrote that, and then I did the art for it, and we had such a great experience on that. We thought we would go ahead and try creating something original, and so we've been working on that. But I guess just the day job of doing covers and
Yeah.
occasional one shot or something like that has always kind of
Yeah.
taken priority.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you've just to shout out here to like your fantastic work here. You've mentioned all three of them there. Your one shots. There was that amazing Spider-Man one that you did, which is absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely loved it. And the what was it? The Doctor Strange, the Best Defense.
Yeah.
Man, that was it's such a treat to see you do a whole issue of that. So, I mean, those one-shots that you do, if any fan, they're really, really treasured. Also, your covers, I wanted to actually talk to you about that because apart from being just an exceptional artist in the books, and we will get to maybe talking a little bit about Moon Knight issues that you've done, but I want to talk about your Moon Knight covers. Now, I follow your newsletter as well, and I've seen you're very generous in showing, some variant covers that not necessarily had made it, but they look awesome, like the Daredevil one. With the Moon Knight covers, what I'm getting at, Greg, is that how do you come up with those designs? Like, I know it's a bit of a broad question, but they really do add to the overall Lemire Smallwood run, For instance, I think it was a second issue. There's a really kind of trippy...
Oh, yeah.
Kind of...
the head one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to talk about those covers. Those are... those are sometimes inspired by the story itself. Sometimes it's just an idea that I wanted to get across. Sometimes, like with that cover... that actually was the editor, Jake Thomas, telling me he wanted something that looked like an album cover, something trippy and weird. And so,
cool.
Immediately started thinking about just the weirdest and trippiest album covers that I've seen, and just sketching out ideas. And it's actually it's funny because it is kind of a square design on that cover, and that's precisely because I was actually sketching it in kind of an album format, and so that I could really kind of get in that headspace of it looking like an album cover. But yeah, a lot of the covers, it starts off with an idea, like the one where he's pulling off his face and revealing the Moon Knight face underneath. That was something that I wanted to get the idea across that Moon Knight is his true, identity. And so
that's a very memorable cover. That actually, that's very indelible actually, because the symbolism. Sorry, Greg, you were explaining it, but was is very, very nice indeed.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. It starts off with that idea, and then I just start brainstorming on how I can visually convey that. And it takes a lot of time. It's a lot of just kind of, spitballing, doing a lot of doodling there, thinking about it for long periods of time and then not thinking about it. Sometimes your brain can actually work out these little connections for you while you're thinking about something else. And so, a lot of times it's, just sitting there staring at a wall for a long period.
You see, that was what I thought when we were just having a little chat before as well, and you said that, you're a bit of a night owl, and then you surprised me when you say this is when you do your drawing. That's what I thought. I thought that was the time that you'd be not necessarily staring at a wall, but I think that's the time that you'd be germinating these ideas and all that. Very, very, very interesting indeed.
Yeah, well, it's actually, it's a little bit of both. I mean, this is where I am coming up with ideas. My brain seems to be more active at night. And, but yeah, I mean, usually I can do a lot of that while I'm sitting there drawing. I can just sit there and think about whatever upcoming cover I've got while I'm sitting there drawing a page, or even a cover that I'm currently working on. And I'm thinking about this cover. But, I do have a notebook that I keep near my desk and jot down ideas if I have them really quick. It's always good to get it down on paper as soon as possible. Those things
in
your head if you don't. But the Moon Knight covers were really fun because Marvel let me just go wild on them. I mean, I rarely ever turned in multiple sketches. It was usually I turned in one sketch and I'd say, this is what I want to do. And they might have notes, but a lot of the times, I mean, to my editor's credit, like they just said, good to go ahead, and
That's so cool.
Yeah. And I think that's, and it creates this really positive feedback loop where, because I know that I'm going to get less static about, from my editors, I feel a little bit more creatively free to do whatever. And that pushes me to explore a little bit more. And I think that's why those covers get into like weird territories and they're a little bit more bold and sometimes expressionistic, is because I felt like I had like free reign to do whatever I want. And I don't always have that with covers. You have kind of not really strict parameters to work within, but still, a slightly rigid, format. And, and that's, and that can be a little bit of a challenge to then create something that, is striking, something that will catch.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, it kind of echoes from articles I read of Jeff Lemire. Like, so, I mean, without a doubt, in my eyes, the Lemire Smallwood run of Moon Knight is really good. And Jeff Lemire had mentioned that he was given kind of a bit more of a looser rein on Moon Knight, with opposed to his other work, which I always cite, and I'm sure other readers of Lemire, Extraordinary X-Men, which I found a little bland. But Lemire had mentioned that they were kind of trying to control him a lot more in that run. But you can see it. Like, you can see with Moon Knight him having fun with it. And I guess that the same kind of principle applies to you, as you're saying. Like, if Marvel had given you that free reign, we just got this magical 14-issue run where both engines were firing, and it was really, really cool indeed. Did you have a particular issue, like drawing, that you enjoyed?
Well, I mean, probably the duller ones, because they were easy. I mean, anytime I had to draw deserts or vast amounts of space, I always loved that because that's super easy. But
hang on, sorry, Greg, you say that's super easy, but you draw so much detail in that. Like, it's
that's well, it's part of the I've worked with Photoshop for almost 2 decades now, and so I know it like the back of my hand, and I know little shortcuts and tricks, and so some stuff might look like really, really tough to pull off. Might only be just a few brush strokes, or me configuring the brush just the right way so I don't have to do a ton of work. That's not to say that I am a perfectionist. I will sit there and work a page for hours on end. But yeah, a lot of times the sand scenes, the dunes, and the space stuff, it's just fun because I just sit there with I just fill it with black, and then I just sit there with space. I just throw stars and splatter and just go wild. And the sand was like it was very zen-like to sit there and draw sand, and it was just
it's quite out of body experience while you're dotting away, I guess.
Yeah, but I'd have to say that if I had there's definitely some issues that felt more rewarding once I was done with them, because I felt like I'd accomplished something, and that was probably issue I think it was 10 or 11. I can't remember. The one where we see him as a kid.
Yes. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. That was, drawing kids is really tough, and I had a hard time really getting him to look the right age, and then also look like Mark. But yeah, that one I was really, really proud of when I was done with it. So.
Oh, that's an absolutely stellar issue as well. And there are some artists that fall into the trap of making little kids just look like little adults, So the level of attention that you put to it, and actually to make it resemble Mark, is just really, really great. I wanted to also ask, Greg, but I was going to ask this just when we wrap up. Oh yeah, before. I mean, I do appreciate your time. So, so you mentioned during the comics, you did like those vast desert and space things. How was it with working with? Because again, one of the big features of this run, volume 7, I believe it's officially from Moon Knight. How did you find working with the likes of James Stocco, Wilfredo Torres, Francesco Francavilla? I mean, not necessarily like directly, but I guess with storytelling, how do you sync that up? I mean, I know that you both got all different parts to play, but it still has to kind of come together in some sense.
I'm amazed it actually worked.
It was fantastic.
Yeah. No, I was actually going to draw the second arc, and then because I think it was just like we were going to do a 10-issue run. I think is what the plan was, and then and then Jeff came to me while I was working on the first arc, and he said, "Hey, Marvel is happy because the sales were really great," and he was like, we can do a third arc, and I've got some ideas, but I'm not 100% sure, and I said, well, I'd love to go back and tell some of his origin, and he leaped at that, but that of course put me in a weird position where I was like, well, I don't know if I can like keep this up. I'm eventually going to run out of rope.
Yeah. And
so my idea was always to do the second arc in different styles anyway, and and so I told my editor, and I told Jeff, I said, it'd be really cool if we could bring in different artists for each segment, and cool. Like I said, I give a lot of credit to my editor. Jake Thomas is a really, really sharp guy, and nice. I don't think a whole lot of people could have pulled it off, but Jake managed it, and he just I think I gave him like a little bit of a list of people that I thought would be cool for each story, but Jake pulled it all together and organized the scripts so they would be color coded, so everybody knew their part. And then once in a while, I think I would step in, I would do a layout, so that way everybody could just kind of fill in their panels.
Okay. Oh, so you did the layout?
Yeah, for like maybe one issue. But a lot of times everybody just kind of followed my lead. So like I would send a design for poor James Stocco had to stick with my designs for the the space suits and the planes and the spacecraft. It was weird because in comics, sometimes you do communicate a lot with your collaborators, and but I'd say most of the time, I'd say probably about 80% of the time, you don't. You kind of communicate through, like Jeff and I, we've talked plenty of times before. We've spoken on the phone, but I think for the most part during our Moon Knight run, we didn't. We shared a couple emails, went back and forth, but most of the time, he would just give me that script, and that kind of told me everything that I needed. And it was the same with the artists that worked on the project. I barely communicated through email. We just kind of, I think that's also a credit to the editors. They can pull people together that they know will just kind of gel, that will kind of just be able to do their thing and do it well together. And there won't be any of that friction, and it just all kind of falls into place. That's just kind of how it felt. Like it just, Stocco, Torres, or they send these pages in and they just fit, it just totally, would do his thing, and we all kind of knew like what Francavilla's stuff would look like, he would put it in, and it just looked right, and it fit right into the story, and it was effortless, to be honest. I'd like to say that lots of planning and logistical working around stuff, but it was just kind of clicked.
Oh, that's bloody awesome. I was just thinking while you were mentioning about Francesco Francavilla again in your newsletter, because you did show some versions of when you were taking on different styles, right? And one of the most striking ones I thought was the Jake Lockley scenario, which Francavilla did, but you did it in a Frank Miller Sin City-esque style. It was pretty damn cool. I mean, Francavilla is obviously fantastic as well, but that would have been awesome to see as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, it would have been tough to pull off. I was having a lot of trouble sticking with each style. But I mean,
You should have asked to be paid triple. You should have asked to be paid triple.
Yeah.
3 different styles, you know.
But I was just really happy that we got the artists of that caliber that we did, and I mean, it's just always like a little bit of bittersweet, because I'm like, oh, that would have been really cool. Like, it would have been neat to show off, but at the same time, I actually really do truly believe that I think getting really very different voices on that book helped it.
Yeah.
I think it elevated. It also made that book a little extra special, because you were getting artists.
It did, absolutely.
That often, like Stokoe didn't really do a whole lot of work for Marvel, and he's delivering this work that you normally only see in an indie book, and then just getting everybody to go in on this together and it be unified in such a way that it was. I think, that was just special. What
a nice pitch to Marvel as well, to, as you mentioned, with Stokoe, because as you say, he doesn't do much of this stuff, but if he's only doing like a few pages here and there, you'd be more kind of likely to, I'm assuming, to maybe say, I'll give it a go, I'll give it a crack. And the experiment kind of paid off, because as we've mentioned, it was a great run, and it came off just superbly. I was going to ask you, Greg, if if you jump at the chance to work with Jeff Lemire again, but it would be very hard to top. I'm imagining this experience with the 3 other artists and just the way things happened with Moon Knight. It seemed like quite a special run.
Yeah, well, actually, Jeff and I have tried to work together several times, but
nice.
Yeah. We tried at Marvel, but when we gave them a huge list of characters that we'd love to work on, but they didn't. They weren't interested. So we shopped around some projects at DC, but all that stuff fell through. It's really hard to. Usually, DC and Marvel, they'll come to you with offers, and they'll pair you up with who they want you to pair off. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of hard to come even just as a team and say, hey, we would like to do a book together. I think,
but if the sales are good, I would have imagined, if you, critically acclaimed, that would have been,
I think,
enough, wouldn't it?
Well, they're still afraid. I think publishers, there's a little bit of fear of establishing a strong team that can then go off and do something else.
Okay.
Right. If I'm just guessing here, but that's what I think. It kind of.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, sorry, Greg. Just 2 more things before we wrap up. Again, I'm just mindful of the time. It's very late for you over there. Thank you, and thank you so much for sharing your time with us. It's been awesome to bloody just talk, just talk shop. So, what I was going to mention, 2 things. Yeah, Midnight Suns. There was that thing that you was that one of the things that you pitched with Jeff Lemire, or was that something off your own?
Pitched that solo at the time. I was talking with Colin Bunn had expressed interest, but I was also talking about bringing on my buddy Jai to write it with me, but it just never got too far. I put together a little pitch for it, and then he got assigned an editor, and Axel was actually kind of shepherding the project. He really liked it a lot, but then he got canned, and then they came out with Damnation instead, and so that's kind of what happened with Midnight Suns. And
well, we got Blade now, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, we got Blade like in Marvel now, so at least he's shown up.
Yeah, well, it's funny because it seemed like they were interested in bringing back some of these characters, and you had guys like Donny Cates who were really interested in writing a lot of these characters. And I mean, I thought it was a shoo-in for a good selling title. I think people, at that time, people were really, and I think Venom kind of shows this, that people were really kind of rediscovering those characters that they loved in the '90s, and I see them again. I think especially the horror characters, but Marvel's marketing department didn't think that it would. They weren't as confident in Midnight Suns, so that
yeah.
the stumbling block.
There'll be a time. Yeah, there'll be a time and place for it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I liked my pitch for it though. I had it all plotted out, and I had the whole thing plotted out.
Would have been awesome.
Yeah,
would have been awesome.
So yeah.
Bloody hell! Anyway, who do we have to get in their ear to get it happening? I don't know. But anyway, that was a talk of a lot of the Looney Corners, because obviously Mr. Knight was featured in it as well. Greg, look, I have to, again, massive thank you for all your time. It is an absolute boon to have you on this show. I'm very proud to have been able to talk to you, and I'm hoping the Loonies out there will enjoy this informal chat. But before we go, I wanted to throw to you, Greg, a question hobby-wise. What's one of the, apart from comics, obviously, and art, what is a hobby that you are passionate about that others, or fans won't necessarily know you do?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Well, I've got a 4-month-old baby boy, so that's
congratulations.
a hobby right now. I think demands a lot of time.
Yeah.
I love reading. Actually, I love reading theology. I'm a Christian, so Christian theology, dating back all the way to the beginning. Church fascinates me. So it was a big thing. Like I really wanted to make sure that Mark was wearing his yarmulke on the flashback sequences, and I made sure I thought that his Jewish roots were kind of foundational for the character, and that's part with my interest in theology. So yeah. And that was taken a step further with Max Bemis's run, so it was good to see actually, and that's fantastic. Well, Greg, thank you again. Loonies, that was Greg Smallwood. Actually, Greg, sorry, just before you go anyway, if there's anything you want to plug, or anywhere that people can contact you and say hello, and maybe join your mailing list. Oh yeah. Well, get on Instagram and find me on there. I think it's Savage Smallwood on there. You can just search for Greg Smallwood. You follow me on Instagram. I've got a newsletter. I think the sign up is on my Instagram, but I think, I don't know. I should.
We'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, there you go. And as far as upcoming projects, I'm still doing covers for Punisher. Pick up Vader Dark Visions. I've done all the covers for those. Be on the lookout for. I've got a short little Spidey story that I'm working on right now, and then another one shot should be probably solicited, maybe in the next previews or the one after that. So be on.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm
awesome.
One right now.
Going to be definitely getting that, and I have all your Punisher covers, so don't you worry about that. So sorry.
Oh, right on. No, thank you for buying them all.
Yeah. Nah, they're great. They're fantastic. All right. Well, I'm going to throw now to my future self as we continue our 100th episode. Looney listeners, you can contact Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast, on email at itkmoonnight@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook with a Facebook page and group, and on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Discord, Get Vocal, as well as on our website, intothenight.libsyn.com. You can also check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/itkmoonnight. Please consider checking out the bonus incentives, and any contribution will help us expand the show. A big thanks to sponsors Hello Headphones, empowering gamers to play their best. Use the code ITKMoonnight and get 10% off their online store. Also, a big thanks to Dreamland Comics. Use their code MOON and get a big 20% off their online store. We're also an affiliate member to Entertainment Earth. Please use the links to purchase any of your toy action figure needs, and each purchase helps support the show. We're a big part of The Collective, a band of a few like-minded podcasters. And please check out the links in our show notes for access to all their shows. Alternatively, you can type in hashtag TheCollectiveNet on Twitter to see all the shows and all their tweets. Finally, if you'd like to review our show, please do so on Apple Podcasts or on Podchaser. This will help us get out there just a little bit more, and any loonies who don't know the show will be able to tune in. As always, take care, and may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night. Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Material used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners. Any reproduction of any properties of Marvel is solely for entertainment use only.